My father is a murderer. My mother is a minister, the secret of my birth that has followed me all these years. Have you ever looked at your parents and realized you don't actually know who they are? Not the parent version of them, the versions that existed before you were a thought? I grew up in a house filled with soft edges. My mother was a woman of deep, unwavering faith, a minister who spoke about grace like it was the air she breathed. My father was a quiet man, a bit of a loner, but his hands were steady. He fixed my toys. He fixed the leaky sink. He was my rock. But there was a gap, a 10-year hole in his timeline that was always explained away as the years he traveled for work. I used to imagine him as a salesman or an adventurer. If you found out your entire existence was the result of a crime, would you still be able to look at yourself in the mirror? Because How My Parents Met story doesn't involve a coffee shop or a mutual friend. It involves a 12-gauge shotgun, a crime of passion, and a maximum security prison. Let's go back. Long before I was born, my father was on his second marriage. By all accounts, he worked himself to the bone. He was on the road for weeks at a time, driving through the night just to provide for a life he rarely got to see. It was a Tuesday. He was tired. He decided to cut his trip short and surprise his wife. He imagined the look on her face when he walked through the door early. He was right. She was surprised. But not the way he expected. He walked into their bedroom and found the life he had been building was a lie. He walked in on her with another man. In that moment, my father says the world went white. There was no thought, only a primal, shattering sound in his head. He didn't scream. He didn't fight. He walked out of the room, went to the closet, and grabbed his shotgun. He walked back into that bedroom. He shot the man dead. He wounded his wife. And then, in the sudden, deafening silence of that house, he didn't run. He sat on the porch, called the police, and waited. He told them, "I did it. It's over." The trial was a media blur. The judge called it a crime of passion, which is a poetic way of saying his heart broke so hard it turned into violence. He was sentenced to 10 years in a maximum security prison. Imagine that transition, from a hardworking man on the road to a number in a cage. For the first 3 years, my father lived in total silence. He didn't want visitors. He didn't want pity. He felt he deserved the gray walls. He felt like a monster. But in his 4th year, something changed. He began attending the prison's chapel, not because he was religious, but because it was the only room in the prison that didn't smell like bleach and fear. That's where he met her. My mother. She was a young prison minister, barely out of seminary. Her job was to bring hope to people the world had discarded. Most inmates looked at her as a way to get a good word for the parole board. My father looked at her like she was the first person who saw him as a human being since the night he pulled that trigger. Their romance wasn't built on candlelit dinners. It was built on 15-minute conversations through reinforced glass. It was built on letters smuggled through the mailroom. My mother saw a man who had committed an unspeakable act, but she also saw the immense weight of his remorse. She believed in the theology of the second chance. To her, my father wasn't just a murderer. He was a soul in need of redemption. They got married while he was still an inmate. It was a small ceremony in the prison yard. No white dress, no cake, just a promise made under the watch of armed guards. And then came the controversy. In some states, at that time, conjugal visits were allowed for married inmates with good behavior records. It was a way to maintain family ties. My parents had one weekend, one small trailer inside the prison walls, away from the guards, for 48 hours. And that is where I was conceived. I am the physical manifestation of a man trying to outrun his past and a woman trying to save his future. I am a child of the system. My dad was released shortly after I was born. The judge granted him early release for good behavior and the work he'd done in the ministry. He spent the rest of his life being the man my mother knew he could be. He never touched a gun again. He never even raised his voice. For years, I struggled with this truth. I felt like I carried the blood of my father's victim in my own veins. But my mother told me something I'll never forget. She said, "Your father gave up his life that night, but God used me to give him a new one. And you are the proof that the story didn't end in that bedroom. We aren't just the sum of our parents' mistakes. We are the choice to move forward. My father is a murderer. My mother is a saint, and I am the bridge between them." But lately, I've been haunted by a question I'm almost afraid to say out loud. What if the man my father killed didn't know? We always frame these stories as the other man, the villain, the homewrecker. We assume he knew the risks he was taking. But what if he was just a guy who thought he'd met a beautiful woman? What if he believed her when she said she lived alone? I keep replaying that night in my head, looking for the clues he should have seen. Have you ever walked into the home of a married person and not seen a million signs that a couple lives there? The wedding photos on the mantle, the extra toothbrush, the pair of men's boots by the door, the smell of someone else's life. If my dad traveled as much as they say he did, maybe those clues were tucked away. Maybe she cleared the photos. Maybe she hid the boots. And if she did, then the man in that bed wasn't an intruder. He was a guest in a trap he didn't know was set. It changes everything. It means my father didn't just kill a home wrecker. He killed a man who might have been just as deceived as he was. It means my father's crime of passion took a life that was innocent of the very betrayal he was being punished for. This is the part of the story that doesn't fit neatly into a sermon. My mother talks about the grace my father found in prison, and I believe her. I see the man he is now, but I also see the shadow of a man who never got to have a now. A man who died in a stranger's bed because he trusted the wrong person. I am the product of my mother's mercy and my father's second chance. But I am also the result of a tragedy that left a third family somewhere out there with a hole in their lives that can never be filled. When I look at my life, my career, my future, my very existence, I realize it was bought with a price. I am here because someone else is gone. And sometimes, in the quietest part of the night, I wonder, if that man had seen the boots by the door, if he had walked away, I wouldn't exist. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever felt like your past defines you, just remember, even in a cage, life finds a way to start over. I'll see you in the next one.